back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scaleups, and Early Stage Businesses, with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. And this week, we're talking with Marcy Clark. Marcy is the founder and owner of Marcy Clark PR and an expert in the space. Can't wait to hear more about this. PR is something I've done but don't know a ton about. Marcy, could you share a little bit more about yourself and your company?
Hi, Jerry. I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for
So I've been in the PR and events space for about 20 years now. So you don't stay in it this long unless you love it.
Or
It's
you're
something
crazy.
or you're a little crazy. It's the both.
Yes.
So I was a theater kid. That was my background. Actually, like a lot of the best publicists that I know come from the performing arts space. You have to be, for PR, you have to be really unstoppable. You have to be somebody that you can hear all the no's for your client, so they don't have to hear it, and you can keep going till you get them the yeses in the media that make all the difference. So I'm very skilled at getting creative and coming up with new and fresh angles. And I specialize in earned media. So what I'm doing is I am interviewing my clients, I'm talking to them, and I'm getting out the ideas, the story ideas that they have, pitching those to the media and convincing the journalists, actual journalists, not paid people, that they should write about what my client is doing. And so this is, it's very different from marketing, and it's very different from how people think about PR.
That's exciting. Before I ask a question that I'm really curious about, I've got to mention this. I didn't know you were a theater kid. My oldest daughter was stage crew all through high school, and my youngest daughter was in every play from 7th grade to her senior year. And here's a quick funny note on her. You get her in a small group, 10 or less people, she won't open her mouth. You put her on a stage in front of a few hundred.
Wow.
Her 5 foot tall ginger self will scream across the whole room. It's amazing.
I love people. I mean, I think theater helps with that. Theater helped me to really love people, see the uniqueness and the best in people. It brings out your empathy. So I love that your kids are doing that, and I think it's that being able to kind of reinvent yourself. Something's not working, you're hitting your head against a wall. Okay, what's next? Half of what I learned in PR, what I need for PR, I learned in improvisation, in scene study, right? In auditions. There's no new business meeting that is harder than a theater audition.
Yes. Yes, and my daughter did improv as well. But if you let me, I'll gush about my daughters for an hour.
Okay. So that's okay. I hope I have that problem.
Well, let me ask you this. So I think for some people, PR and marketing feels the same. But I know from talking to you in the past that it isn't. Could you kind of share more about that so people can understand what marketing is versus PR?
Yeah. So very simply, marketing is a big umbrella, right? Think of it as like a big tent that includes within it public relations. It includes brand positioning, which is something that I do. And it can include under it, your website, your logo. It can include, brand names, taglines, all of these areas. So as a publicist who does branding, I do some of these aspects, but under marketing is also advertising. I don't do that. It's social media. I'll consult with people on their social media, but at the hourly that you're paying me as a media expert with 20 years, you don't necessarily want me running your social media. You can have that can be found a little bit cheaper, right? So, you want to have a cohesive strategy though. So somebody who is a brand strategist and publicist, they can help you with that. I have, for one of my clients, I'm the chief marketing officer, right? But there's people I partner with for the advertising for the other pieces. Public relations, traditional PR, the main thrust of it is earned media. So that is me emailing, calling. I'm old school, right? I've been in this business since the, early 2000s. So I will pick up the phone and call a journalist. Especially sometimes I get them interested over email and then they're like, I'm not sure. And over the phone I can, convince them to stay engaged, stay on with my client, share why this issue matters so much that my client is being an expert on. um, PR is, getting the a lot of the news articles that you see. If you pick up a newspaper, if you pick up a magazine, if you listen to a podcast, if you pick up, whatever, media you're engaging with, chances are, maybe 60% of the time, a publicist might have pitched that story or surfaced, brought the story idea to the attention of a journalist on behalf of their client. So, and then there's also a lot of times where sometimes I pitch one type of story for my client, and then sometimes even 6 months or a year later, I've had, for example, one client, Psychology Today, reached out after I pitched a client had a sleep clinic. And 6 months later, I had finished, was wrapping up a client project, and they reached out and said, hey, we really want to do we saw you have an expert, a psychologist who's an expert in sleep. We would love to have him write some articles for us. So I secured him a column in Psychology Today. Wow. At the end of our engagement. Yeah. So it's, PR is planting seeds. Some people describe it as a tap, right? It's not a tap, right? You don't turn it on and it's a gush of placements coming in. It's something that builds over time.
Makes sense. And I can imagine, so I've worked with marketing firms before. What's it like to work with a PR firm? How does that, if I were to say, gosh, I'd like to work with Marcy Clark PR, how does that happen?
Yeah. So I make it really fun, right? Because of my background. So I start with, I do a really in-depth interview. So I get to know this person. And this is also practice for if they're doing podcast interviews on themselves, they're doing, they're interviewed for a profile for a magazine story. They have to practice being interviewed and talking about themselves. I'm the first person doing that. So I'm like a very friendly, low key, low stakes. And through that process, I ask them not just about what are they doing right now, what's newsworthy about their company right now. I'm also asking, tell me about, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What did how did you start your first company? What did you study in school? Oh, did you win any awards at your previous work? I had one author, for example, who really cool guy, and he was writing a book about his experience and style and exploring really creativity and self-expression. And his background had been as an accountant and a salesperson for this company, and winning hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, maybe even in the millions over the years for his company. And he'd had to be very buttoned up, very straight-laced in his previous role. So although those things don't seem to have anything to do with each other, through our process, I was able to actually weave that into the story, how he had changed. There was a before and an after for this human. And these kind of stories, it's like the humanizing of people so that, when you're pitching the media, you don't want anybody to see them one-dimensional or too simple.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So the interview is a big part of it. And then as well, then we go into, like visualization. So I'm getting people, I might invite them closing their eyes and thinking about, if you imagine a New York Times headline and your name's in it, like really take the time. What is around it? What might that, title say? And we go through with a bunch of different kinds of media, and, imagine you're opening up, a magazine, you see yourself in it, your face. What does it look like? How many pages is it? So we go into that kind of visualization, and people are really intuitive actually about what's possible for them. Like, things they said in those initial sessions, I've achieved, in articles.
That's awesome. And do you predominantly work with business people or with government, or what's your typical clientele?
Yeah. So I do specialize in positioning people as experts. So I'm, ideal for people that are, purpose driven CEOs. They're, sole entrepreneurs. Maybe they're a coach or a consultant. I work with people usually that have a business that is providing a good, for the public. So one of my clients is an app for people with disabilities. And, I help that client with everything from, securing, podcasts with people like yourselves and, New York Times articles, to also, if there is a potential partnership, we're talking with, Johns Hopkins about supporting some of our research that we are bringing people together, for people with disabilities. I'll be on those calls and just make sure, the communication gets furthered in a really efficient way.
That makes sense. So for
Yeah.
somebody like me, so I wrote the
Yeah.
book Destination Employer. My
Yes.
company helps typically startups to early stage companies to be able to consistently attract, recruit, and retain the top talent in their markets. Would I
Yes.
be the type of a company that you'd work with, or more like a fractional CEO or CFO or leadership coach? Or
No, like a person like yourself is ideal because you own your company, right? It's your full-time thing. Not that, those I do work with a lot of coaches, but people that write books,
Mhm.
that is such a gift for themselves and for a publicist. The shelf life of a book or a project, like that, what a lot of people don't know is that I can use that, oh, he's the author of, this book, and, we'd love to comment on this news story, and these are three possible, headlines, story angles we'd love to explore. We can dine out on that book for years.
And I plan on
So I think,
it.
yes, exactly. It took a lot of work to write it, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, it's nice because people know you're somebody that, the thing that it does is people know you're somebody that can organize their thoughts and, and can condense them. So it makes you a more trustworthy person to be interviewed.
Yeah, and I found, so I sometimes interview authors as well, and authors are great. I think it's the clarity of thought it takes to write a book. They're great on podcasts because they can answer questions succinctly, and then if you want to dig deeper, they're able to do that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a lot of work initially to organize all your thoughts and get everything down. So that's actually a big part of my work is I help people. I'm like, let's rewrite your bio. Let's make it media friendly. Let's get your media alert announcing this new initiative. Let's get your bio. Often I write my client's bio in 3 different links, right? Really short, 3 sentences, the 1 paragraph, and the 3-4 paragraph, because different opportunities you need to have those ready to go, and you need to be able to highlight like what is of interest to the media. um I also then organize like for all different types of media. A lot of people don't know this, but I would pitch very different types of story angles and headlines if I'm pitching a lifestyle publication like Well and Good, right? Or Allure magazine, as opposed to pitching, the New York Times or the Washington Post. So you're doing different kinds of headlines, a different audience. And so I'll segment the media for my clients, similar to if we were doing if they were going to do an ad buy. I segment the media, and then we come up with story angles and pitches for each of those segments. We'll do in the brainstorming, we'll come up with tons of options for each angle. And then we revisit them, on like a weekly or eventually maybe a bi-weekly call. and we fine tune, we freshen up, and then, I have conversations with people like you. I might say, Jerry, what are you seeing right now? What are you hearing from people that are in the hiring process right now? What are they having a hard time getting? Or what are you hearing from job seekers? Are they, somebody told me a third of people in tech right now are worried about losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a lot that can create a lot of movement, right?
Sure.
So how does that affect your work?
Yeah, it's I know your answer or asking the question hypothetically, but it's a crazy time right now in the
Yeah.
markets with everything going on. So when you're
Yeah.
working with a PR company, um, what can you expect? You said
Hmm.
biweekly calls, different types of media. Do you specialize in a
Yeah.
particular type, or how does that work?
So I'm because I'm somebody, I've been in the industry a long time. I've worked specifically in a number of industries, but I am a generalist. So I can do, business, I can do, I had one client, one time I had my first PR job, right, fresh out of school. I was in England. I had the first gluten-free food company in England. I had a fueling solutions company, and I had a plastic surgery firm that were my clients all at the same time. And all of them were interesting, to me. Because you're telling, you're figuring out ways to tell a business or a human story. And so I can work with a big variety. I would say, if you have a very B2B oriented business, I'm going to more likely be able to secure you, um, business publication, your in network, trade publications, and then, maybe some articles in, Financial Times. I've secured a number of clients in Financial Times, maybe Wall Street Journal, right? So they care, who cares about the financial stories? If you are a consumer client, or if, for yourself, Jerry, you know, jobs and, hiring and all these are big issues that everybody cares about, right? You have a B2B business, but it's a consumer story as well. So for you, I'd be pitching television. I'd be pitching, New York Times. How are they, who are they talking to about jobs? Who's writing about this? Who's getting the man on the street stuff? And then have a real expert, that to offer them.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
From an outcome
Yeah.
perspective, I imagine this is,
Hmm.
and if it's an unfair question, please don't
It's
feel
not.
obligated. But from an outcome perspective, if you engage with a company, how long does it typically take for them to start to see themselves in magazines or print or television or whatever?
Yeah. So one thing you'll hear from a lot of PR firms that scares people away, right, is people say, we can't guarantee results. We can't guarantee any, press, but we will, do all these things. We'll try really hard. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to hire somebody if that is their first instinct to go really hard on that. Like I get it. Usually I work with people, we start with 4 to 6 months, and then, with the option to continue at the same or similar rate for another 6 months or a year or so. And a lot of my clients I usually work with, maybe a year and a half to, I have some clients I've worked with off and on for 10 years. And a lot of clients say, hey, I just did a new thing. Can I come back? We can do, a 3 month project. Yes, of course. So that's because I do secure results. I am like a dog with a bone, and so it might be that the first month or two we're refining your story, and it's just a slow trickle, and we're starting to have conversations with media. But by month three, you should have some article online or podcast. You should have some things happening, and then by month six, you should have a few articles out in the world, and several more opportunities in the hopper.
And
right? So I try to average, at least 2 opportunities a month for clients, if not, and I've had clients that I, did a 3-month project and got them 20 stories.
wow,
That's not typical, but I've done it a few times.
that's exciting. And from a workflow
Yeah.
perspective, so you engage with a prospect, the two you decide to work together. You go through that process you described earlier on. You start reaching out
Mhm.
to the various media outlets, whatever makes sense for that
Yeah.
particular client. Do you write the articles and they agree to publish them, or do you engage with them and then they interview your client?
Great question. So usually, I engage the journalist and my client, get them on the phone, or a lot of times the journalists nowadays, they want to send an email Q&A, and that works better for some of my clients. They prefer that. It's 50-50 what people prefer. Um, they, and then they go from there. That's common. Another way that often happens is sometimes people are very busy and they say, "Oh, this is really interesting. Would you like to write a guest article?" So, if they want to do a guest article, then sometimes my clients, it just depends on their skill level, their ability. So sometimes they'll say, "Oh, yeah, great." And I'll send them the parameters. I'll say, "Hey, can you do a guest article on this?" And they have to make it, it has to be personal, it has to be expert driven. They can't, you can't over rely on AI for this kind of thing. Journalists will know. Um,
Yeah, most readers
and
will too.
yeah, yeah. So, sometimes the clients are writers and they'll do that. A lot of times my clients are busy running their companies. They're stressed. So sometimes what we do is I say, "Hey, get on the phone with me let's schedule an hour or 90 minutes and we'll bang it out. We'll write the 5 paragraphs we need. We'll write it together." And then through that process, we also get ideas for more stories.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I've written a book and I blogged for a very long time. I'm capable of writing
Yeah.
articles. The problem I typically have is just the time to do it. That's what's
Yeah.
usually the hard thing for me as a
Well,
business
and
owner.
I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of the doula or I'm helping, with the fear of the blank page
Yes.
and the overwhelm. Because what you really need is, the help with, we all need help focusing to get things done. So that's something I'm great at doing. I'm very motivated. I'm social motivated. So and a lot of my clients are too. That's why they're hiring, PR. They want to get in front of more people.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm not a big LLM fan, but the one thing I do like it for is getting words on the page. None of those words are
Yes.
going to stay on my final page,
Yeah.
but just getting that process, that flywheel turning, it's super helpful for that.
Yeah, or even maybe you have a lot. Maybe you have tons of ideas and you start writing out all, please help me organize, these key points into an article. And maybe you write 2 paragraphs of, ideas for your language learning model and it spits out 3 and then you edit from there. So there's, it's okay to use tools, but you always want to check everything because, as we know, AI can make up quotes and
Yes.
books that don't exist. And, we do have I do really consider myself, as much, I get paid by my clients, but, the media are my partners in this. So I consider myself, I'm a member of the media ecosphere and I take that really seriously. And I don't publish fake
Yeah,
things. I
garbage.
don't publish fake quotes. Yeah, I'm not going to make stuff up. We can come up with a fresh initiative, an exciting idea. We can start, a foundation or a nonprofit, but we can't, you know, uh, I have had people say, "Oh, what if we say that I'm going to, walk across the country for this cause?" And then, I had somebody,
You better be willing
share
to.
that with me. And then, yeah, and then it turned out after a few weeks, then he was like, "Hey, the girl I was going to walk across the country for, we broke up, but I think I found another girl that I can walk." And I said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm not pitching the story."
Yeah. You say something that's so important in business that gets lost sometimes. You,
Yeah.
as a business person, make your reputation, and then from that point on, your reputation makes
Yeah.
or breaks you. So I couldn't agree
Yes.
more. You can't, if you don't have
Yeah.
integrity, you can't succeed. I couldn't agree
Yeah,
more.
almost all my clients come from referral.
Hmm.
So, that's because people, really trust me. They feel safe with me, and they know I'm working hard. They know I'm like, I'm a straight dealer. Like if some story gets, killed, I'm like, I'm going to find another home for that idea. I'm going to be sad with them, and then we're going to, pick up together.
Yeah. Every business relationship I've ever had over all my time in business has been built on two pillars: success and trust. If there's not success, there's not a reason to continue. And if there's not trust, you can't do anything. You're always second guessing everything that goes on. So I couldn't agree more.
And you don't need, I really think the success piece, like I don't paper my clients to death. I don't spend a ton of my working hours detailing, this is all the things I did for you. Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is, hey, these are the opportunities. Hey, this person, I just scheduled an interview, check your Calendly, make sure it's there, right? That's what you care about.
No, I couldn't agree more. Let me ask you.
And what you need for your website is you need those logos, all the media logos. You need your articles. You need the links back to your website, right? That's the actual stuff that makes a difference and has people go, oh wow, this, oh, Jerry was quoted in Inc. magazine and Forbes and Business Insider. I guess, what, let's go with him.
No, I couldn't agree more. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So if you're a business person like myself, when you're looking for a PR firm, what things should you be looking for?
Great question. I think, you want to know, a lot of times there's big firms you can talk to, right? I'm basically I'm a sole entrepreneur, and I partner with other media professionals. So if there's a big account, maybe I, bring in another senior publicist to work with me on something. But in general, you're working with me, you're talking to me, you're emailing with me, right? Maybe I have an associate that helps, but he's not brand new. And, one thing I think that people get burned is they hire a big fancy firm in New York or San Francisco, or, I'm in San Francisco, but, they hire a big firm that has amazing placements for, blue chip clients. And maybe their rates are 10, 15, 20 grand a month, right? And they show you all these great results they've achieved. But the thing is, they often staff it. So by the time, that you're meeting with the senior people, you're meeting with the salesperson with all the experience. But then when it comes to who's actually writing your pitches and sending them out, it's the more, junior new people. So I've seen, this has been true for 20 years. I've done a little work in-house, mostly, I've been on my own, because that ecosystem, it kind of really burns people out. And maybe, they're like, oh, you know what? Wow, their rate's normally 10. I got in for 5. They're excited. And then, they've spent, after 4 months, they've spent 20 grand, and they don't have anything to show for it. And they meet me, and they're like, oh yeah, I tried PR. It didn't work. And it makes me sad, because,
it hurts you.
They could have worked with me. Yes. And they could have worked with me for, a longer period of time. And, I know how to get around initial media hesitation, and, we figure something else out.
Yeah. And I will say this, Marcy, what you described, unfortunately, is also common in business and technology consulting. The salesperson sells the project. The company sends in their A team in the beginning. Once things settle down, they start subbing out that A team with their C team. And before you know it, the people you're talking to are nowhere near the caliber that you were originally dealing with.
Yep. Exactly. So it's,
So that's very exciting. If people do want to work with you, how can they get in touch with you? How can they find you?
Yeah. So I am at Marcy Clark PR, MarcyClark, PR as in public relations. And I love to set up an initial call with somebody if they're interested. They can email me. And I have my whole portfolio is on the website. So it's not everything I've gotten, but it's highlights from every, segment that I work with, from, arts and entertainment, fashion to, business and tech. So they can see, oh wow, she's secured all these places. I trust this person.
That's awesome.
That's my hope.
For folks listening, for newer listeners, that website will be on the show notes, so you can find it there. So you can reach out to Marcy directly. Marcy, I don't know a lot about the PR world, so I feel like there's probably things I missed. Is there any question I haven't asked that I should have that would help people to better understand your business and kind of when it makes sense for them to engage a PR firm, maybe?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. Well, I like both your questions. I think about in terms of when it makes sense to engage a PR firm. If you have, for example, a new product launching that you want to talk about, or you are going to be releasing a book, or you're going to, you're getting ready to be, sell your goods at TechCrunch, for example, you want to be thinking, go back, look at a date 2, 3, ideally 3 months or so in advance of that, and get, or 6 months if you can, and engage me then, so that we get the media. If you have a number of articles that you can show where you've been featured, then when you are at TechCrunch and you're selling your product or your service, people trust you. So you have that, that thing. Or if there's even a funding announcement that you're going to be able to have about your Series A, it takes time for us to get everything together. So engage me, 6 weeks to 2 months in advance, and we can get everything together, make it exactly perfect how you want it. And, and all those stakeholders that we have. And we can start pitching other ideas, getting your name familiar with the journalists so that they've heard about you at least 3 times, right? That's a common number. They say once you hear about something 3 times, I always say, you're about something 3 times and you start to think it's your idea, right? You're like, oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
So we start creating the familiarity. And then when I say, hey, this company has, it has a really exciting announcement, or they have a new product, the journalists have this recognition and this friendliness to you.
Yeah.
Even if it's subconscious for them.
It's interesting. I've gone to consulting clients and shared an idea with them, and they were interested but didn't do anything, shared an idea with them, interested but didn't do anything. Then a month goes by and they go, hey, I had this idea. And it's the literal thing that I talked to them about. And I'm like, oh my God.
No, oh my God.
So
yeah, you have to when as a consultant, you sort of have to get over your idea, your ego a lot, right?
Yes, it's not about you. It's so about funny. The outcome you achieve for your client. It becomes a mantra you say to yourself in the mirror every morning to maintain your sanity.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
It was great having you on the show today. I think this is a good place to wrap up. I'd love to have you on again if ever there's anything else you'd like to add. I'd love to have you on again.
It would be my pleasure. And yeah, I was saying, it might be fun to look at, kind of maybe some of the questions that I ask a client at, this intake interview, maybe that would be kind of a fun exercise people could do, in the car, wherever they're listening to you, they can get some free expertise from me, and then
That's a great
hopefully
idea.
maybe they get excited to do more.
Let's plan on doing that as a follow-on episode.
Okay, awesome.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate your questions. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. As always, for folks listening, thanks for sharing some of your valuable time with us. Between now and next week, continue building that awesome thing and providing that awesome service.